I will take, I think, 20 to 30 minutes of your kind attention to tell you the story of the Projector magazine, which I published since 2007. So it has already more than 15 years of history, and the fresh issue is dedicated to the Turkish graphic design scene, and we assembled it together with Selçuk and our colleagues from Sabanci University. So it all started back in 2007 when I was a managing partner and a creative director of one small editorial house, which published several items, not on design. They were not focusing on visual arts or any issues of graphic design. So I proposed to start a new periodical magazine focused on visual arts and design. And here you see all 39 covers of the magazine published since that period. And I will tell you some milestones of the magazine's history and some events which influenced also my professional career. So the first presentation took place in Bulthal Design Gallery in St. Petersburg back in 2007, and it became rather a noticeable event in the design life of St. Petersburg. But I was much criticized by my colleagues, and that critical notions were absolutely for real mistakes, and I started the magazine both as a founder, as an art director, as an editor-in-chief, as an art director. I did all the layout, and little by little it developed, and each issue had a very distinct structure, like an IKEA shelf with compartments which we felt with their appropriate materials and interviews and historical publications. And the thing is that the first issue was supported by my partners, but then that little editorial house went bankrupt, and I lost my job as a creative director. But at that time I already was the founder of the media of Projector magazine, and that was a period when my wife and we had our first daughter. She was just 3 months old when I came home and said to my wife, well, honey, now I'm jobless, but don't worry, I will always earn for the living. But I have a magazine which I have to publish, and I want to spend all our savings on the next issue. And she said, you're completely crazy because I'm not working now, and you decided to fire all our savings on your toys. But okay, do whatever you like, I believe in you. So, and when your wife says that she believes in you, somehow it turns into a kind of a success. And later, when I look back on the history of the magazine, I find that very many people who were featured in the early issues later became my close friends, became my colleagues. For instance, Yuri Shtepakov, genius illustrator and printmaker, now he works at our university in the art and design school in St. Petersburg. And little by little the magazine gained its audience, became more and more known, but still I was not really sure about being true mass media, but I always kept in mind my audience, my colleagues whom I addressed with the publishing of the magazine. And later there appeared also some partners like Vitra company, which we did quite a lot of publications together. And I also paid a greater attention to the history of design of the 20th century and did quite a lot of interviews with the prominent designers all over the world, promoting the works which I found really spectacular and peculiar in the field of graphic design. And in 2009 there appeared the first international issue, first dedicated to the Finnish design, and later I was traveling quite a lot to Finland, meeting designers from the Finnish design scene like Hari Koskinen, like Ilkka Suponen and others. But this interview with Massimo Vignelli became really a crucial milestone in the history of the Projector, because to me the name of Vignelli stays in one row with the most influential graphic designers of the 20th century, and to me Vignelli existed like since the beginning of times. And when I contacted him through our mutual friend Vladimir Chaika, who was his assistant in his New York studio, and Massimo was really very open, very friendly, and that was, I think, the first interview with a truly big international design star. And after the interview with Massimo, I realized that there are no closed doors. The position of an editor-in-chief of a designer's magazine opens almost all the doors, and you just have to knock. And most of the design stars which I contacted, which I interviewed, were very willing to contact, were very open, and shared their positions, their backstages of their work, which I found really interesting for the pages of the magazine. And then I realized that it's truly my media, my own playground. It took, I think, 3 or 4 years to realize that that I should do just what I enjoy, just what I like. And this, in the very center, there is a cover of the magazine with a poster of Vladimir Chaika. I really do appreciate his poster series, and I asked him to design a cover for me. And he later called and said, Mitya, somehow I cannot place the logo on the cover, it doesn't fit my poster. I did it with transparency layers, I did it like 90 degrees vertical, it doesn't fit. Let's stay away from that. I would rather prefer not to place my poster on the cover. And I said, Chaika, come on, we can leave the logo away. Let's publish a magazine without a logo on the cover. And he said, is it possible? I said, well, it's my magazine. I can do whatever I want. And we published this magazine without a logo, but with a very important word, love, on the cover. And later I published another magazine with also the word love, because I think if you love what you do, you always come to a successful project. And later I gave myself a present and put my own face on the cover. It was like a self-irony because like this saying a face from a cover, it's something what I do not apply to myself, but that was just kidding with my readers, with my audience, and with myself. That's how it looked. That's how I did some photo shooting with the cover and with the same eyeglasses. Later, the magazine developed with a series of international publications. For instance, this is the publication of Vladimir Chaika, whose poster was on one of the previous covers. And you see, in 2011, I entered the kitchen and saw some magnetic toys which my daughter painted on the wall of the fridge. And I said, okay, Alisa, let's do the cover of the magazine with that, with your decorations. And I think that was the youngest designers whose works were published on the cover of a designer's magazine. She was 3 that time, well, I'm really fond of that cover, not only because it was a production of my daughter, but I think it looks fun. Some more important interviews came later with Luigi Calani, with Piet Hein Eyck, when I dedicated the issue to the Dutch design scene. With Theo Janssen, I'm sure you know his kinetic sculptures, which are self-moving due to the wind. With João Machado, and here you see some of the spectacular spreads with works with Majid Abbasi. And later, in 2013, there was a period in my career when I was simultaneously an editor-in-chief of 3 mass media projects. First was my Projector, another was an online media, art1.ru, dedicated to the arts and culture scene of St. Petersburg, and the third one was another magazine, paper magazine, which we founded together with my partner, and it was dedicated to the antiques and collections and flea markets and art auctions and all kind of collectibilities. So one more cover I want to focus your attention on. This is the work of my friends, Dutch studio Leslie Moore, Karin van der Brandt and Alex Clay, a creative duet from Amsterdam. They have this poster, All You Need Is, from one point you may read it as All You Need Is Love, but for a graphic designer the simple geometric forms mean really quite a lot, and from the other point you may read it as a kind of a manifesto of modernist graphic design, that all you need is a circle, a triangle, and a square. When I was an editor-in-chief of art1.ru project, I also took some publications from the online resources to the printed magazine, and there appeared a big section in the magazine which was dedicated to fine art and contemporary art. Here you see some publications from that section. It differs from the main sections of the magazine by its layout and typography. Later, I think that was 2010, in Moscow, during Golden Bee Design Biennale, I got acquainted with Stefan Zagmeister. He was the guest of the Biennale, and I think that time he was also the member of the jury team. And later we agreed to have an interview, and for sure some of you know this famous poster where The lettering is blade cut on Zagmeister's skin. It's one of the famous works designed by him. But later I studied the story of that poster. In, I think that was 2017 or 2018, or even or a bit earlier, Martin Wutli, also a prominent Swiss designer, he came to visit the opening of the exhibition which I curated. The exhibition was dedicated to contemporary Swiss design, and he showed me this photo when he was a young assistant in Zagmeister's studio in New York. That was his idea to cut the lettering on Zagmeister's body. And I find that very interesting that magazine gifts me such kind of backstage stories which stand behind some prominent works which you know for ages, but quite few people know their history, and in contacts with designers who are telling these stories, that's a kind of a privilege of being an editor-in-chief and a publisher of designers' media. Now we have published an issue dedicated to the Turkish design, and I'm now approaching another national school. Next issue will come out of print, I hope, by the end of November, and will be dedicated to the Israeli graphic design. And one of the main characters of Israeli graphic design is Oded Ezer, and we already had an interview in 2013, but we'll return to a new publication this year. So, and Projector, the magazine gives sometimes some hidden signals. I don't know how it works, but you know, the cover is designed like in the very last day before sending the magazine to print. And naturally, you are not building the scenarios of covers for years. And somehow it turned out that in 2013, something started to happen with the logo. Once I glued it with a transparency film, then there appeared some shift in the typography. Then the logo was destroyed by typographic composition. And in the next issue, I totally changed the design of the magazine. I acquired both the new typefaces from Yuri Gardon, a famous Russian type designer. And so it happened that this series of covers became really symbolic. The old design was destroyed and new design appeared. And that year, I think I had my most public talk with the largest audience. That was Typo Berlin, Typographic Congress in Germany, where I spoke in front of the concert hall with 3,000 people listening, and we spoke about the story of the magazine, which was, I think, only 6 or 7 years that year. Now the history of the magazine is much more, much richer and much longer. So from time to time, I was not publishing. I have never been publishing a lot of my own projects, but during the last decades, I was always involved into teaching and conducting workshops in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, in other regions. And sometimes I allowed myself to publish some of the works of my students and some examples of the works from my own workshops. But naturally the magazine was focusing much more on the prominent figures of internationally renowned graphic designers and product designers. So there was an interview with Karim Rashid. He was the guest of St. Petersburg Design Week, and we met in my hometown. And it was another very interesting story with Axel P. Möller. Here you see the spread with the yacht on it. I did an interview with Axel and published his typographic works, which I find really amazing. And I wrote him a mail that I will send you the layout for final control after the vacations. Now we are going to Rhodos, to Greece with my family. And he responded immediately, by the way, Mitya, I didn't tell you that my studio is located on a sail yacht and I'm just 2 days away from Rhodos. Send me your geographic tag. I will come to your beach and we'll spend some days on my yacht. And that was like in a fairy tale. We were sitting on the beach near the hotel and his yacht appeared behind the rock and he anchored near our beach, and we spent wonderful time on his sailboat. So that's another nice story which Projector gifted me, among others. What I told you about the magazine Antiqua, dedicated to all the strange and valuable collectibilities. But we have published only 4 issues, but then we broke with my partner and I could not prolong and continue with publishing this magazine because we were like in both, we had 50% of the magazine and I could not continue without him. But that was an interesting time, and it had totally different layouts and focused on any kind of items which could be collected, from fine art to wine and from fire weapons to some strange artifacts. That was a period, I think, of 1.5 years when I was deeply involved into the antique scene of Russia and visited several extraordinary collectors in Europe as well. For instance, I visited Raven der Bund in the Netherlands, and he's the owner of the world's largest collection of strong spirits like cognacs, Armagnacs, port wines, and the oldest cognac I tasted at his place came from 1811, so it was more than 190 years old. We didn't drink much, but still he gave me a drop from those precious bottles. That's another nice experience from being an editor-in-chief of some media. And when I was doing Antiqua magazine, and up till now, my greatest point of interest are flea markets. For instance, when I come to Paris, well, I'll be in Paris next week. First place which I will visit will not be Louvre, it will be Port de Clignancourt, the antique market, prominent antique market of Paris. So we could publish some things from the collections of old toys or fire weapons, or even meteorites which are falling to Earth from the space. And when the collector brought some strange stones to the editory. He said, well, all of these objects are older than Earth, and that's weird. So, and that was the new layout. When the old layout was crushed, I designed totally a new layout for the covers and for inner spreads of the magazine. There came an interview with Rolf Appelbaum from Appelbaum Associates, I think a person who designed over 500 museums all over the world, the most prominent museum design studio on Earth. Interview with Ralf Freivogel, a Swiss designer, with Jonathan Barnbrook. And later, a new chapter in magazine's history started. Before 2015, I think I kept a very strict schedule of publishing a new issue every 3 months. And starting from 2015, we did this issue on American poster and American graphic design in collaboration with the New York School of Visual Arts, and I also curated an exhibition of those posters and invited Mirko Ilic, an American graphic designer whose works are even in the collection of Museum of Modern Arts in New York. He came with his artist talks and lectures, and since that time I started to work on the magazine not only as a printed codex, not as a book, but also accompanied every issue with exhibition and some edutainment events like lectures, artist talks, and that naturally needed more effort and more time, well, to understand that most of the magazines I designed myself, and I did most of the publications, most of the text editing, and that's kind of that was a one-man show during about 8 years, 9 years. I've been doing the magazine almost alone. Of course, not alone, with the help of my colleague, but from the point of view of structure, of content, of layout, that was all my work. Fortunately, the last 4 issues we do it together with Ivan. I'll give him the word later, and he will tell about the new design of the magazine. But in that issue on American graphic design, I had wonderful interviews with Milton Glaser, with George Cherny, with Ivan Chermayev, with Mirko Ilic. The true heroes of the design scene, like Massimo Vignelli, Milton Glaser, existed in my picture of the world like since the beginning of times. The author of I Love New York logo and very many other genius and prominent projects. He was also very open to talk. We talked about 2 hours on Skype, and then it became a big interview in the magazine. So these are the works, the art director pages of the New York Times, designed by Mirko Ilic. They are in the treasury of Museum of Modern Arts in New York. George Cherny, Ivan Chermayev, and that's Mirko Ilic on the opening of the exhibition, looking through the magazine. Then appeared an issue dedicated to the Finnish design, and it became a part of the official program with the State Hermitage Museum, the largest art institution in Russia. That was the presentation in the Hermitage Lectorium in 2015, I think. Then an issue dedicated to the Swiss graphic design, both from the point of view of the history of the Swiss graphic school and the contemporary Swiss graphic design. That's Martin Wutli, who cut Stefan Sagmeister. He came to the opening of the exhibition and gave a lecture. Then came the Danish issue, which became an official catalogue of the Pushkin Museum exhibition titled The Legends of the Danish Design. So most of the issues during the last almost decade, beginning from 2015 and until I think 2019, I did in collaborations with big cultural institutions like museums, foundations. The French issue was a joint project with the French Institute and Alliance Française, accompanied with a big exhibition with guests from France, Philippe Apellois. He was an art director of Louvre Museum for several years. Alain Le Kernec and Iqbaz Baker, those three masters came to the exhibition opening. Then the magazine turned 10 years and I decided to give myself a little gift and published a magazine about the history of the magazine. How we did it, describing all these stories of for instance, Sagmeister's poster and Martin Wutli, the story of my face on the cover, the story of my daughter Alisa designing the cover for the issue, and it was the one published in two languages, Russian and English. Then Dutch design again, and the opening, then Japanese design, and that was a publication. It started with a publication of Mitsuo Katsui. He gave me a big interview, but unfortunately before the magazine was printed, Mitsuo Katsui passed away, and that was his last public interview published in my magazine. So that was the opening with the Consul General of Japan. And then a new chapter of the magazine's history started when I entered the HSE Art and Design School as the head of the St. Petersburg branch of the school. And naturally, during its whole history, Projector was a kind of my own reflection, my own projection about the things which were important to me. And since 2018, I'm surrounded by the extraordinary and creative and amazing works of my colleagues and our students. And since 2018, I started to dedicate the issues to the works of HSE Art and Design mentors, which are all active practitioners, and the works of our students. And what I find really important to the history of the magazine, we started to design the layout together with my friend Ivan Vorontsov. At that time he was still a second-year student, I think. When we designed this issue, that you were the second-year student, third-year student. So it was a truly amazing project of collaboration, of the student collaboration, and to me it was important to give the floor, to give the opportunity to my younger colleagues to express their abilities, their talents in the field of graphic design. And finally, we are approaching the fresh issue, which is on Turkish design, and it starts another new chapter in magazine's history because it's the very first issue published only in English. And from now on, I will focus on gaining more of the international audience because, well, the distribution of the paper printed copies, of course, limited by the circulation, but we have different instruments of online publishing, and if even a Russian version of the magazine achieved like 50,000 readers, I am quite optimistic about the growth of the audience of the magazine when it will be published in English. So now we discovered the Turkish graphic design scene. Now we are approaching to the Israeli graphic design scene, and I hope that the history of the magazine will continue. And to finish the story, I would like to give the floor and the microphone to Ivan Vorontsov, the art director of the magazine, who designed this wonderful cover and who's the author of the layout. And Ivan will tell about his ideas and approach to the layout of this issue, and that was it on my side. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, I may click.
So my speech won't be so long, and I'd like to say a couple of words about the design of this issue. So when we just started working on this number, I decided to make this issue very special and unique. And firstly, I decided that an interview with each guest will be in a unique style, as I said. It's because some single style of the layout won't work right. And because of this, the work took a lot of more time than I expected. But however, I can say that I am really proud of the final result. And this issue, I think, it's really great. I love it. And also, I want to say a few words about the cover of this issue. So, if you can see the design of the cover, its visual style comes from the starting page of each interview, but we with Mitya decided not to make this cover so simple, so we took metal foil material as the main material of the cover, and I think this decision makes the cover more memorable and more unique. Yeah, so I think this is all I wanted to say. Not too much, but thank you for your attention.
In the very end of in the last section of the magazine, you may find some works of our students. Also, Vanya's work, an exhibition design from Istanbul to Constantinople. That was an exhibition which is planned by St. Petersburg Museum of History. And now the exhibition is postponed, but we do hope that it will be realized. Among thousands and thousands of projects of our students on the online portfolio, we found several which are based on some Turkish material, and those were Vanya's project of the exhibition. That was a visual research on Turkish ornaments, and that was a visual identity development for the Independent Cinema Festival. So we decided to combine the works of the Turkish designers and the works of our students, which are based on the Turkish materials. And for 2023, I gave myself a plan to relaunch all my resources internationally in English, and the first thing I did is my private website kharshak.com, where I assembled not my designer's portfolio, but mainly events, curated exhibitions, lectures, public talks, interviews, all the valuable events which somehow were crucial and important to my professional career. Soon, I hope by the end of September or the middle of October, we'll finally relaunch the website of the magazine in English with the top selected interviews, which I mentioned in my presentation. It will be available on projector.international. And finally, I hope that I will succeed with relaunching the website of my studio, which will be available at projector.media. And that will be a good result for 2023 in my personal life. Okay, thank you very much for your attention, and that was it about the story of the magazine, and I hope that it's not ending, and now we are approaching a new period in magazine's story, and my ambitions are to make it an international transboundary design media. Thank you very much. Today we had a meeting with Selçuk and colleagues from the Sabanci University, and I should say that nowadays our school is approaching the international educational market, and we are in search of the partnership with the international universities in Turkey, in India, in Asia, in Middle East. I hope that our partnership with the Sabanci University will continue, and we'll work together on launching international educational programs, which will be available online, but it's a project of the aim to the future years. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, feel free to get as many copies of English of these magazines.
I have a quick question. Are you thinking about translating your old issues into English?
I'm thinking of it, but that's an enormous load of work, because there are 39 issues published, 38 of them in Russian. Each features about from, let's say, 15 to 30 publications. Altogether, that makes about 1,000 texts. I don't have neither financial resources nor time for doing that kind of job. Most of the interviews with international design stars I did in English, of course, but later for the publications they were translated into Russian. And what I faced now for relaunching the website and publishing the interviews, the original interviews in English. Well, some of the texts I have in English. Some of the original interviews I have only the sound recording of my talk to the interviewed person. But some English originals are lost and I have only a Russian translation. And what we do now, it's really ridiculous from one point that we translate it back to English to publish it online. So it's also quite a big job to do, but I think I've selected about 50 main interviews with the international designers, which I did during these 15 years, and they would be available online. All the other publications, of course, not. I'll publish the archive of the issues in Russian. Still, there is an audience for that. But the magazine is mainly focused on the visual side of our profession. So it's a very valuable, to my mind, archive of images and the works of designers, which really helps me a lot in teaching. I do the presentations for my students based on my publications, and that helps to make it more a systematic archive.
So in the next one, the Israel also will be only in English, yes?
Yes. Now from now on only English.
We have a stock in Saint. So the stock will be in Saint Petersburg, correct?
Well, seems so, but I'm open for any offers and suggestions. I don't know. At the moment, I think it's from commercial point of view, it's better to print in Russia. But I don't know. Maybe it's better to find a printing house in Istanbul and print the issue here and distribute it worldwide from Istanbul, like a logistics center. I did not calculate that. The thing is that I'm really very busy with the school and our students and administrating the processes there. That's why I cannot devote myself entirely to producing the magazine and making it a business. It was never a business. It was a hobby. It was educational activity. But now I do not have any commercial department who would bring me advertising budgets. It doesn't feature any commercial advertising inside. So it's from one point my own investment, from the other point some sponsors support, and it's a kind of a valuable, for my studio it worked a lot as a valuable PR instrument, and at the moment I think it's time to make it international educational and culture magazine. I distribute quite a lot of copies on the exhibitions, on different open events. I present quite a lot of copies. So commercial part of publishing was never crucial to me. It was more like a hobby.
Is there like a comparable magazine outside in the market?
Yes, there are there is a number of designers magazines in Europe. In Russia, I remained the only one. There were several remarkable designers magazines like Cock magazine, like Identity, like Greatest, like Designers Union, like World of Design. They were all published by, well, the publishers and the editors later became my friends, but they did a great job in 90s and beginning of the 21st century. But unfortunately, those magazines do not exist anymore. Some featured around 60 issues, like Cock magazine. Others finished with like only 5 issues, like Da magazine. So they all had different stories, but none of them exists anymore.
I have a question.
Yes,
How
please.
did you come up with this idea?
That's a question to Ivan. He's an art director.
When you say Turkish, anybody can expect something like a historical Ottoman writing or something else, but this looks like a watery, kind of slimy. It's quite futuristic, so it's a
Yes, that's our impression of Turkish design from the outside, because we are not inside the Turkish design community. And producing the magazine was a new discovery for me. To say honestly speaking, I didn't have a distinct picture of what Turkish design is. And when we started to get acquainted with the works of our colleagues, we found that it's absolutely contemporary. It pays, of course, a tribute to tradition, but not to a greater extent. It develops as a contemporary structure. That's what we tried to express in the cover.
It's amazing, really.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming. Hope you'll enjoy the magazine, and finally you may not only see the pictures but also read the texts of the interviews. And from now on it will be published only in English. Well, thank you.
Thank you.